Digest, your weekly breakfast of insights, tips and tricks, and general information that will help anyone trying to move things forward in this digital world of accounting. I am joined by the wonderful Ian Pay from the ICAEW today to dive into the changes to the ICAEW qualification, which was, I guess, stated as groundbreaking to some extent. So I'm really intrigued to find out what this means, how it's working, especially as it's been a while since I've done my exams, and I don't know if it's changed fundamentally since then. So, Ian, thank you for coming on. Please, quick introduction, and then what this is all about.
Yeah, so yeah, as Ryan says, thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Ian Pate. I'm head of data analytics and tech at ICAEW, which is a very grand title, but essentially my role is how we support our members and the member firms in all things technology related. So looking after the communities that we have, the Excel community and the data analytics community, and that wider technology engagement. And I do get very involved in the training side of things as well, which is obviously very important. So yeah, the next gen ACA, as we call it, we launched it last month now. So it's been we're starting to get students sort of registering on that program. September tends to be a very large intake of students, so that's kind of we want to make sure it was ready in time for that. Um, there's a number of changes that I think are worth sort of talking through. I'll touch on those kind of more broadly, and then we can maybe do a little bit of a dive into the sort of technology side of things.
Sounds good.
The headline stuff is essentially the base principles of the qualification haven't changed wildly. So you have exams, and you have your sort of time and experience element of it as well. So that's still kind of broadly unchanged. We've slightly tweaked the structure of the exams, so there is one less or one fewer, maybe, I don't know. My grammar is not good on a
Either
Thursday morning.
works.
But yeah, so we're down to 14 exams now. There were 15 previously. We slightly changed some of the structures and contents to kind of cover that. For those who it's been a little while since they've done the qualification, all the exams are computer based now. So that's a big change. There was a few years ago, and also we introduced spreadsheets in the exam. So you have, almost like a little mini version of Excel in there for you
Yeah.
to do some little calculations or manipulate some data that you've been given. So that option is available. And then we also have some analytics in the exams as well. So I think many people know, although it's white labeled, it's no secret that it's Inflow that is in the exam platform there. So I think was a couple of the exams. I think it's now just in one of the exams. We have essentially hands-on, roll up your sleeves and do some digging with data as a really core part of that exam. And that's been in the qualification for a few years now, and that continues with the next gen ACA. So that's the exam side of things. So a few tweaks, and it's worth saying that technology is weaving all the way through that. So we've talked
Yeah.
about the ABCD of technology for quite a long time now, and that's kind of what are the really big topics in the world of tech. So you've got AI and automation, you've got blockchain. It's been a bit quiet recently, but it's
Has.
gaining momentum again. You've got cloud and cybersecurity, and you've got data and digital transformation. And we sort of have a plus, which is kind of emerging technologies and all the kind of maybe quantum's going to come into play in a few years' time. These
So you've
sort
got an
of
E as well. You've got like a
yeah,
tagged
it
on
all
E.
fits quite nicely. We'll
It does.
we'll figure out what we have to do when we get to F or G, but for now, it's all kind of is nice and alphabetical. Um, so Excel as well quite nicely fits under E,
It
which
does.
we do
Yeah.
recognise is actually a really important skill for a lot of accountants. So yeah, so all of this is kind of weaved all the way through the qualification and all the way through the exams. We haven't got a dedicated exam on technology or on data, although we do have one of the modules now. I do need to just double check my notes to get the name right, but we have a module which is corporate reporting, data, and assurance. So,
And that's one of the core 14, is it?
and
That's
that is
one of
one of the
the main.
14. That's the professional level exam now.
Okay.
So it's the first time that we have a module that really has sort of data in the
Yeah.
title. So that's quite a key change for us.
So what's the big shift? What's the the game changing element? What's the big
So
buzz?
the big change is this thing called specialized learning. So the easiest way to describe that is essentially it's CPD for students. So
Okay.
we all have to do CPD as chartered accountants. Depending on what your body is, the requirements are slightly different, but the broad expectation is you have to do a certain number of hours every year. So what we wanted to do was introduce this concept of ongoing learning as a student. So it's essentially saying we've set up a platform with a whole bunch of learning content on it, and you, as a student, need to complete a certain number of hours of that content in order to achieve your qualification. So the specialized learning platform is mandatory, and students do have to complete a number of courses on that platform. And we've been working behind the scenes to really sort of curate a very wide range of content on there that will continue to develop. So, I mean, you've got the broader things in terms of some of the more human skills, like how to, how to kind of write reports, or um, some of the kind of building resilience type topics, these sort of
Okay.
softer
Yeah,
type
the softer
things.
skill sides. Yeah.
We've also got some that are more kind of industry specific courses. I'm just checking the list. So at the moment we've got something on the public sector, something on
Okay.
manufacturing. There's plenty more going to be coming on that, and there's a few more that I haven't mentioned. Agriculture, I think, is in there as well. So we've,
Okay.
you know,
Makes sense.
for those students who maybe need to specialize or want to specialize,
In a firm that is very kind of niche and like they're doing
yeah,
quite a bit, it makes
yeah.
sense to have a
So it just,
solution, doesn't it?
giving people a little bit of a background on those sectors so that they understand some of the nuances, some of the accounting quirks of those sectors, so that they have that kind of awareness. And then on the technology side of things, we've got at the moment we've got a couple of technology courses. We've got a broad sort of introduction to that ABCD, and we very much frame that course as how is technology impacting the profession, but also how do you account for technology, because we know with changes, the way that software licensing is evolving and R&D and all this kind of fun stuff, there's actually some quite interesting accounting treatment that you have to think about when you're working with tech. So we've got that. We've got an Excel course which has been very popular so far. So
Obviously.
I mean, I was surprised, but maybe I wasn't. I don't know. We've had I think over 150 students have already completed that Excel course, which is really, actually, given it's only been live for a month, and these are students who have, probably just started a new job, going through the first
Yeah.
few exams. That's
Well,
actually quite impressive that they've
I think it's
embraced that.
critical, right? So there's so much where you start out that you need to work on Excel that getting that as a fundamental
Yeah.
baseline, I think, is very, very positive. So
Um,
just to kind of, I want to dive more into the detail of some of these a bit later, but just so I understand the context of this, you've got the core exams, you've reduced that by 1 to 14, but then you've added on the specialized learning. So
yeah.
how does that balance? Has the amount of education probably increased for the students overall? Because they're now doing this CPD as it is kind of alongside.
We've tried our best to keep it roughly the same.
Okay,
Now, obviously, with the specialized learning platform, there is a mandatory amount, but you can do as much as you want to. So if you
of
really
course.
want to fill your boots, you're obviously very welcome to do that. But we sort of recognize that it's already a lot of work to go through a qualification like the ACA, while in many cases doing a full-time job at the same time. So we really didn't want to add to the workload of students. So that's one of the reasons why we took one of the exams out, so that we could make a little bit of space for the specialized learning. And that specialized learning is very broad.
And how many then, say you've got, I don't know, 14, 24, and a number of courses that are in this, how many do they have to take? Have you got a numbers at the moment?
There is a number. I will admit I actually don't know off the top of my head. I think it's something in the region of 20 hours in total. Some of the courses are
Got it.
slightly longer than others, so it's kind
Yeah.
of a unit-based calculation.
Okay.
Um,
And are there tests
but yeah.
associated with those courses, or it just like CPD? It's just learning.
It's I mean they're kind of e-learns. There's kind of an assessment at the end of the e-learn.
Yeah.
You do need to pass the assessment to kind of prove that you're actually paying attention. I'm not going to say
Okay.
like it's kind of really strict kind of if you
Just making
fail
sure
it
you've watched the
kind of
video,
thing.
right?
It's basically, yeah, it's making sure that you've followed along, that you've engaged properly with the learning.
Yeah.
And the really key thing, and the reason why this is a game changer, right? A lot of people may not be aware how regulated qualifications work, and you kind of think, oh, well, why is this qualification not reflecting kind of all the latest trends or stuff? And that's not necessarily just an us problem. That is a challenge across many qualifications. When it's a regulated qualification, the lead time to change the syllabus of the qualification is extremely long. You're looking at
Yeah.
around 18 months typically from the initial we want to change the syllabus to students
It being.
actually taking those
Yeah.
exams. The
Okay.
difference with specialized learning is that we can deploy new courses very, very quickly. So you're looking at 1 month or 2 months turnaround from inception to being able to have that course live on the platform for students to do. So that gives us a lot more agility. And it also means in the world of tech, as we know, things moving so quickly, we can be a bit more responsive to that. We can, and we are looking at that at this, is potentially introduce courses that are almost kind of like news updates. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of reflect, here's the latest developments in this area in the last 6 months, and
Yeah.
actually make that something that you get recognition for doing as part of the qualification.
Because obviously this is very. You said kind of CPD for students. I'm going to call it IPD, initial professional development. I don't know if that's just a made up term, but I'm going with it. Is this something that if you have qualified that you might be able to use on the platform as well? Because I'm sure there's people that have recently qualified that have not had experience of this that might look at it and go, oh, I'd really like to know a bit about agriculture and I'd love that to be part of my CPD. Is that something that's possible at the moment or something you're exploring?
It's not something that's possible at the moment, but it is something that we're looking at. It's also worth saying that we're actually doing some things the other way round. So we're saying that some of the learning content that we currently make available to our members, we will bring forward into the specialized learning platform. So an example of that is the Gen AI accelerator that we launched a couple of months ago, which is a big sort of learning sort of set of courses looking at generative AI and use cases and all this kind of fantastic stuff. And if you are a member, I would absolutely recommend you take a look at that. But we're also looking at bringing across some of that content into specialized learning as well, so that students can get recognition for doing that.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. So, because I think part of the announcement it was that this is future proofing the qualifications of which, admittedly, on the podcast I was very skeptical. Like, how do you future proof? Like, especially with how things are changing so rapidly in AI and the impact that might have on everything we do. But essentially, the way you built this is because you can then roll out the specialized learning, although the core may remain the same, or at least similar. The specialized learning, like you say, enables you to adapt quickly to the big changes that are going on. So the only thing that would fundamentally need to change would be if, for example, AI changed the entire way we delivered accountancy. That would, I guess, impact the main body of the exams. But that's not going to happen overnight. So that allows for that kind of 18
Yeah.
month lead time, whereas you'd still have the specialized learning courses in the meantime that people could go on and then still know what they're going into, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it is about being able to keep up to date with some of the latest thinking, latest changes, and in technology, especially with AI, with everything that's happening there. This year it's all about AI agents. Next year, who knows? Probably something else entirely.
Yeah.
It allows us to just be a little bit more responsive to that. So I think we're really excited about what that specialized learning platform allows us to do in terms of that sort of the latest developments in tech. There is one other thing though in the qualification that hasn't been talked about very much, but
Okay.
we are very, very excited about in the technology space. And it's a thing called the Technology Hub. And it's not launched yet. It should
Okay.
be launching in December. And it is launching to all students, not just those students who are on the Next Gen ACA program. And what the
Okay.
Technology Hub is, or is going to be, is the easiest way to describe it actually is like a shop window for technology software. So
Okay.
what we want that platform to do is to give all students the ability to explore different applications that are out there, different bits of technology, different pieces of software that are relevant to our profession, and do it in a safe way. So it's things like extended trials, extended demos of software. In one or two cases, it's actually full fat versions of the software that are made
Got it.
available. Um, and it's really trying to give students this opportunity to explore software that maybe they're not using in their firm or in their business, um, or explore sort of technology products that they have heard of, but they're not quite sure what they actually do in reality.
Yeah.
The classic example that I use, and apologies, it's a bit of a kind of a Big Four example because I used to work at one of the Big Four,
All right.
but um, a lot of my colleagues would be dealing with these audits which are quite large, and then they do their qualification period, and then at the end of that time they might kind of go out into the big wide world of industry, or they might move to a different firm, maybe a smaller firm. Some would stay, obviously, otherwise the whole model falls
Of course.
apart. But
Yeah.
as we know, a lot of people do their sort of 3 years and then kind of move on. Um, and a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my peers would kind of leave, or change roles or move around, and they'd suddenly be exposed to Zero for the first time, because you don't
They might have to
really
use it, right?
you
Yeah. You
don't
don't need to
really
be using
audit
audit.
Zero in a Big Four firm very much, because it's
No.
just not a it's I mean, it's changing obviously, but certainly a few years ago larger organizations would not go near Zero with a barge pole because it's not
Yeah.
designed for them. So they're used to auditing, SAP and Oracle and Microsoft
Of
Dynamics and
course.
all of these
Yeah.
big platforms, but hadn't really had that exposure to Zero or QuickBooks or Sage or Free Agent or these smaller platforms aimed at the SME
So
market. So
so Ian, sorry, just jumping in. So they're gonna be able to get on, have a look at, or play with some demos. But something that I'm very aware that's been in the past, and probably still exists, is your accreditation system for technology.
mhm.
Is that woven into this technology hub at all, or is that still a separate thing?
It's separate at the moment, but we are looking at how we can sort of begin to kind of bring these different ideas together. Um,
Okay.
but the Tech Hub, we're not, we can't quite, unfortunately, announce who's going to be on the platform in that first launch. We're very, very nearly there. There's a couple of contracts that still need to be signed, basically.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But once we're there, we're hoping to be able to announce that next month. And as I say, that will be available from the 1st of December, we hope, and available to all students. And it is a place where students kind of explore different software products that maybe they don't have access to in their
Okay.
own organization. And that might be to help them develop their career in the longer term, or it might actually be for them to take back to their firms and say, oh, this is a really interesting piece of software. I hadn't really come across this. Maybe we can talk about this.
Yeah, and one thing I think that's interesting on this is, like you say, you've got these sector specialisms now in the specialised learning. So, say you've got agriculture, and you have the technology hub, where maybe longer term or short term, you might have some agricultural focused software. Is there going to be any link between that? Saying, like, if you are going for an agricultural specialised learning, maybe you want to consider the agricultural technology that's in the technology hub. And how are you going to help segment this? Because if you just put a lot of technology into an area, it's going to be overwhelming. It's like going to the Xero or QuickBooks or Sage App Store, and you go, I need, I don't know, a expense management system. You're like, brilliant, I've got 25 expense management systems. I don't know which one's right for me. How are you going to, while still being independent, navigate people to the things they want to consider? Because I think that's going to be the biggest challenge here.
Yeah. So, I mean, the simple answer to that is that we're going to be sort of categorizing the software in that hub. Um, the starting point, there's not going to be loads of software in there to start with. There's going to be about half a dozen or so at launch, but we're already planning for the next phase, which will be another 6 to 10 software providers. And we're also in active conversations with those first phase of software providers about how we can extend what they're already kind of offering with us. I suppose a couple of things in terms of how we sort of link the two things together. I think for now we were quite keen to really keep them relatively separate to avoid any confusion, because the specialized learning is a mandatory part of the qualification. The
Of
technology hub
course.
is an optional part, and we don't want students get confused about, you know, spending time in the technology hub and thinking that that counts towards their qualification when it doesn't, which is
Yep.
important to be quite clear about. We do, however, think, you know, once people are kind of getting used to these platforms, starting to spend a bit of time with them and understand, you know, what the offering is, we've been looking at how we can kind of link a little bit more closely between the two. And a simple example might be to say, you know, we know that a lot of software providers have their own kind of certifications or badges or
Yeah.
these sorts of things. So we're kind of saying potentially, okay, well, you go onto the technology hub, you get an extended sort of demo access to that platform, you get some guided materials to kind of go alongside that to help you navigate it and figure out what's what and all that important stuff, so you're not just kind of left staring at a screen that you don't understand. But then actually, and I'm not saying that we've done this yet, or, but we are looking at the possibility of saying, okay, well, these software providers have these badges, they have these certifications. Maybe we could look at getting some recognition for taking those, as long as it
Yeah.
sort of meets the right sort of standards in terms of rigor and quality and all that good stuff. Why
Yep.
not say, yeah, that potentially then starts to come into specialized learning and starts to kind of be something that you can
Link
actually
together.
get some recognition for as part of the qualification.
Yeah.
So these are the sorts of things that we're kind of navigating at the moment. Obviously, the technology hub is an interesting one because we don't think there is anything like it out there at all. Specialized learning is also relatively unique, although we're aware of similar concepts. But we think the technology hub is something that is quite different, to be able to
Okay.
actually say to an accounting student, here's some software, play with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Go
and there
go
being
nuts.
nothing more than that to it, really.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So, um, any student that signs up for ICAEW now goes straight into the new syllabus, I assume. So it has to
Yes.
go through this path. No way of avoiding that. How does it work for exemptions then? Because when I guess in the past you've got an accounting degree, you can get a number of exemptions as you go through ACA. Is it still only in the core syllabus you can do that, and specialised learning is still completely separate, or do you get exemptions in the specialised learning area as well?
um if I'm completely honest, I don't actually know the answer to that question. um I believe there aren't any exemptions in specialized learning, and I think the reason for that is because of the range of content that is available
Yeah, how would you
that will
do that?
grow. So
Yeah.
it's all, you could say, oh well, there's no point in there's no point in you taking an introduction to financial services because you've done a financial services module in your degree or something like that. But when you've got a choice of like 30 other modules that you could take,
Yeah, and
we're not going to give you
how do you say, I'm good at resilience? That it's subjective as
yeah.
well, right?
So exemptions, for the exams, yes, absolutely, that concept still applies. Some of the mapping may have changed a little bit, but yes, there are still exemptions for those 14 exams where appropriate. But the specialized learning, essentially, there is enough on there that you're going to be hard pressed to find someone who cannot find enough content on there that is new to them.
Okay, and then I guess my final bit on this is that obviously this is rolled out for students. They go onto it. They know what they're doing. How are you educating, I guess, the accountancy firms to ensure they understand now what the students have to do? Because I guess the main challenge is that I understand the profession and the qualifications it was. This is completely fundamentally different. So trying to make sure I'm providing the right support and guidance for my team as they come through it would now be bit more of a challenge. So obviously you've had announcements, and it's, as you say, it's only a month since you started doing this. So how are you doing that education? Is it more that it's on the accountancy firm to actually find it? Are you kind of reaching out? What's the process?
Yeah, so I mean, it's worth saying that behind the scenes, this has been a long time in the making. So we started talking to training providers about the next gen ACA months and months and months ago,
Yeah,
and we were very sort of clear from those early conversations in terms of what that new structure would look like. So we've already kind of introduced the idea that, you know, there's the exams, there's the specialized learning, and obviously as we've kind of refined and built out the syllabus and built out the platform, we've been able to talk about that more. So we do talk to at those firms and training providers, and also, you know, the organizations like Kaplan and ATT and sorry, not ATT, AEAT,
ATT,
for
you know, various different ones.
letters,
Yeah,
first Intuit, first, yeah, like all those kind of the
yeah,
schools, basically the people who actually kind of teach the courses and stuff. We've obviously spent time with them as well to make sure that they are up to speed on, you know, the new syllabus, new curriculum, and all the requirements. And even though they're probably less involved in the specialized learning, it's important that they understand how that fits in. What's really interesting is we are seeing some firms in a kind of a soft mandate kind of way say, oh, actually, you know, we've seen the list of the specialized learning courses, and we actually really think that these courses are critical for our intake. So what
yeah.
those firms are doing is essentially saying, we expect our students to
That's cool.
complete these courses, and we give them visibility. We can give the firms visibility of what courses their students are
They can
taking.
do. That makes sense, and that's really good, right? So not only does the student have the ability to pick and choose, but they can be guided by their firm, and maybe even mandated to some extent, depending on how strict the firm is. But basically, there's an expectation. That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And we've had Dan Cockerton on, who's commented basically just saying that with how much is changing, it's really nice to see the ICAEW adapting to all these changes. And I think his term was having their finger on the pulse, and being able to, as you say, adapt, bring something out inside a month. So it's really nice to see, especially as you know, we kind of rely on the ICAEW for a lot, and there's been a lot of frustration, I think, over probably the last 10, 15 years on what are we getting for the money we put in. But this really does feel that you've now done a big change, something that, as you say, must have taken a lot of thinking, a lot of preparation to get there. So a massive positive. Have you got any final bits, things we haven't covered that you think people should be aware of?
I mean, I think we've touched on the main things. Obviously, the specialized learning. I think the Tech Hub is something to get super excited about and keep. And, you know, I'd recommend all students to kind of keep their eyes open for announcements on that in the coming weeks. But I'd encourage anyone who's recently signed up to the Next Gen ACA, or anyone who has students in the organization that are just starting out on their qualification. You've got the whole period of your training contract to complete those courses on specialized learning, but take a look today.
Yeah,
Have a look around. There's definitely some courses there that are very much aimed at the very beginning of your training and are worth doing. Things like Excel, things like how to write reports,
yep,
things, you know, those human things around, you know, inclusive working and how to kind of collaborate effectively, and communication skills and all this good stuff, resilience.
yep.
So there's all of that. But also keep dipping in, keep checking in on what's on that platform, because it is
It will
constantly being
evolve.
updated. It will evolve. We've got more courses coming out this year. We've got more courses coming out in the first quarter of next year. We're working, as I speak, on more AI specific content on there as well. So yeah, just
Nice.
keep dipping in, keep checking to see what's there. It's worth looking out for.
Cool. Well, thank you, Ian, for coming on. It's changed my perception based on the release to actually what's happening and what's going on, and as you say, to some extent, future proofing in the way you built this. So really good to hear what ICAEW. Yeah, thanks again, Ian, for coming on,
No
and
worries. Thank you very much.
thank you all for joining. And if you want to make sure you catch future episodes, please do subscribe to Digital Disruptors. You get a notification for the live show every week with what the topic is, for a 9 a.m. start.